and welcome. This is Preeti. In today's video, we're going to talk about how do you use a basic pattern in order to incorporate to make cards, whether it is to make backgrounds or just focal element cards. And I'm going to show how you're going to use this pattern theory to build your cards. So let's talk about different kinds of patterns. So today's video, this is a two-part series, and the first part, in this part, I'm going to talk about a structured pattern. And I'm going to show you three different kinds of structured patterns. That means to say they're systematic, they're orderly, they're not random. So the first one that I'm going to show you here, this is called a full drop, or very simple, in simple terms, it's called block pattern, and it's a repeat pattern. So if you were to take a piece of cardstock, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this into equal segments. So it's going to be 3 by 3 segments, and then I'm going to just draw in those circles. Those circles are my design elements. So this is called a full drop block, or a block pattern repeat. So it's the same element repeating at equidistance from both sides, vertically and horizontally. They will be in a repeated pattern, and exactly the same element repeating again and again. That is a block pattern, or a full block. The second one is called a half drop. So basically it's you drop it by half a block. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to draw a square, imaginative square that you have, or a cardstock that it would be, and how would that pattern look on a block. So I'm going to draw in vertical lines this time, and I'm going to draw the same 3 circles, or my design element, into that vertical block. Now, instead of coming directly alongside it, I'm going to go half a bit up there, and then again I'm going to draw the second element in between the 2 circles, and the third element between the next 2 circles, and then the fourth element after that. So it's what I'm doing is, it's not in the same line, but I'll show you. If you were to draw a line now, when I draw a line, you can see there, I hope this makes sense. You can see that's a full block, and then I'm going to have a half a block. Do you see that, how it dropped by half? So that line, that horizontal line, now comes in between that one block. I hope that makes sense. So this is called a half drop pattern. So what you're doing is you're staggering your elements, your design elements, horizontally along your cardstock. So that creates the half drop pattern. And then third way of creating the similar kind of structured pattern is called a brick pattern. And we all know what a brick pattern is. It's, if you were to look at how a brick is laid on a wall, it would be horizontally laid. So again, I'm drawing this square here. Pardon, these lines are not perfect, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of what a structured pattern. And there are many more patterns that are there. I'm just taking out very simple, basic patterns that we can use to use these patterns to create cards as well. So here you can see I've laid the same 3 circles as my element. And then I've staggered that in between the 2. Instead of vertically, like the half drop on the brick pattern, I'm doing the same thing horizontally. So you can see there how now when I start drawing in that vertical lines, it is between the 2 between the 2 lines. So you can see here, this is vertical and this is horizontal. So that's a basic difference between a brick pattern and a half drop pattern. So these are the 3 very simple block patterns. So they're all block patterns, but they all have a different name, called the half block, the full drop, the half drop, or the big. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take these basic design pattern theory, and I'm going to incorporate that into creating a card. So I'm just going to put these papers aside here quickly, and I'm going to take a white cardstock. Sorry about that. There you go. This is a white cardstock right here, and I'm going to create that grid pattern for me to for my element. So the element I'm using, the design element I'm using, is this from the stamp set, and I'm taking this flower here, and this flower measures an inch, exactly an inch. So I need to make sure that my it's less than an inch, not exactly an inch, actually it's a little less than an inch. So I want to make sure that my grid pattern that I'm going to create for my block pattern, or my full drop pattern, is an inch. Each of those blocks are an inch in size. So I've taken a 4¼ by 5½ white cardstock, and I've marked the center for, on the 4¼ side, I've marked the center to 2⅛, somewhere there. And then I'm going to draw in 1 inch from that point, and then I'm going to turn it around and 90 degrees, and on the longer side, that is at a 5½ side, I'm going to mark the center at 2⅔, and I'm going to again draw 1 inch line starting from that center. So that way I know that I have perfect square grid or blocks for my design. So this is a way that you can create a block pattern background. So again, as I said earlier, you can really use these pattern theory not only to create backgrounds for your cards, but also to create focal, also to create a card without backgrounds. And I'll show you as I'm talking. I don't know how to explain it, but as I show you, I hope that will make a little more sense. So here I've taken that same floral stamp set that I showed you earlier, and I'm going to take this ink pad from the Color Fuse ink, and it's a very coral pink color, and I'm going to just put a pad underneath my cardstock so I get some cushioning here, so that my ink my stamps evenly all over the surface. And I'm just going to stamp this flower right inside that blocks that we created, and you can see here how that pattern built up so quickly, and it's perfect, and it's exactly the same. It's repeated and it's exactly the same. So as I said, you can use this as a background, or you can use this as your focal image for your card, and that's what I'm going to do. And for the center of the flower, I'm going to use some black VersaFine ink to add to the center of the flowers. Now I want these flowers to look more modern and bold. They are not any realistic flowers. These are prints, remember. So I'm creating a very bold flower here with some black centers. I'm just heat setting it because my black ink is a pigment ink, and I don't want any smudging when I start erasing all those pencil lines. And once you've done erasing all this pencil line, you will see that you've created a very structured and even pattern. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take two different rectangle dies. One is a simple rectangle die, and the other one is a cross stitch rectangle die. And I'm going to die cut the pattern that we created with the smallest simple rectangle die. I'm just making sure that I have the right pattern inside that rectangle die, and once I have that placement, I'm going to die cut that. And then I'm also going to take another white cardstock and create a frame this time by putting those two rectangle dies that I talked about earlier to create that frame that you can see. And then I've taken a top folding white note card, and I'm going to adhere this frame that I have created using that rectangle dies with some foam tape. And I'm going to remove the foam backing, and I'm also going to add a liquid adhesive to the foam tapes. This always helps me to make it gives me some wiggle room to adhere before I can absolutely commit to the paper. And I do this so many times when I'm trying to adhere something. It never aligns the first time. I have to pull it apart and realign, and you can see here, look at that. I'm just going to remove it again and again because I never get it right the first time. And so adding that liquid adhesive onto your foam adhesive definitely gives you some wiggle room to adjust if you need to. And then I'm going to take that pattern that we created, and I'm going to just slide it into that frame that we created with some liquid glue. And here I've also gone ahead and stamped and embossed 2 sentiments, and it says "You matter" and "You are loved," and I'm going to add that using some foam tape as well right in the center of this card that we created. And you can see how easy and simple it is, and you can really mass produce this card very easily. And that's the first and very simple way of using that pattern theory to create a card. Now for the second card, the first one I showed you was almost like a background, but here I'm using elements. So I'm taking this stamp set. I think it's called the spring stamp set or Easter stamp set. I'm so sorry. I know this card is an Easter card and Easter is already done, but I had actually planned to release this video before Easter, but I had some family things going on and I couldn't get this video up. So I'm really, really sorry that that I am using an Easter card. But of course, you can definitely change the elements to whatever you like in order to create this very similar. I'm trying to give you an idea of how do you take that pattern to create cards of different designs. So here you can see I've gone ahead and stamped multiple chicks from this little stamp set here, and I've colored it using my Copic markers. And I've also stamped a sentiment on a black cardstock with white embossing powder, and I'm placing the same way, same block pattern. This time I'm not creating a grid with pencil, but I'm visualizing how that pattern is, and I'm going to lay my elements according to that pattern. So what I'm trying to say is you can just take a basic pattern, understanding that pattern, how it is, and how you can incorporate that into making your cards. So sometimes when you're stumped for sketch ideas or design ideas, you can actually look at different patterns and you can bring that to life using your stamps onto your card. And here you can see again, I'm pretty much using that very similar block, the first pattern that I showed you, the full drop pattern, very similar to that, and I'm adding these elements onto the cardstock in that same block way and the repeated way. And again, here you can see that every element that I've used is a different element. It's not exactly the same. Unlike the flower that we used, they were all the same. So I've gone ahead and adhered all of them, and I had some extra chick and some eggs and flour, which I thought I'll just adhere to the inside of this card just to add a little bit more to this card. And that pretty much completed the second card, and how easy it was to just take that same pattern to create another simple card. And now for the third card here, I want to show you a little bit more, stepping it up a little bit more, and this time I'm going to take the brick, not the brick pattern, sorry, the half drop pattern to create this card. So I've gone ahead and taken the stamp set here, and I've already gone ahead and colored and die cut everything. I didn't want to do the coloring and die cutting on the video. It would be a long video and I didn't want to bore you. I basically wanted to show you the pattern theory in use or in action while you're making your card. So here my focal image is this this girl sitting, this little bunny sitting on a crescent moon. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to start placing clouds around it in that half drop pattern. So you can see I'm just staggering that a bit, the cloud a bit onto the moon, one over the moon and one under the moon. I've tucked it under the moon. And I'm going to start placing clouds all over before, I haven't adhered it yet. I just cut the foam and I've added to it, but I haven't stuck it yet. So I'm just going to start doing some placement of this of these clouds in those half drop places of the pattern that we talked earlier, and you can see how I'm staggering in between the two. So it's visualizing that pattern onto your cardstock, right? You're not drawing any grid lines or anything, but you're imagining that there is an imaginative grid line there, and you are staggering those images in those grid lines the way you want. So you're building your own pattern with just that basic idea of block patterns. And now once I have done placing all those flowers, I mean not flowers, sorry, clouds, I also have a few gold glitter stars that I have die cut as well, and I'm going to add them as well in clusters closer to that cloud so that I'm not going away from that block pattern idea. You know, I don't want to put it in places where I would not have an element in a block pattern in that half drop pattern. I hope I make sense. I'm making sense in there. So I'm just going to add this, and once I've decided the placement, I'm just going to start adhering these clouds and those what you call stars, and I do have some clouds in vellum as well. And then I have for the sentiment, I've also taken a sentiment from the same stamp set, and I have die cut the word smile from the die cut smile, again using the same gold glitter cardstock. And I'm going to place that sentiment in at the bottom of the girl, a bunny, and then the smile over that black sentiment strip. And you can see how we took that pattern idea, the basic idea of that pattern, to create a different kind of card. Again, if you look at it at this instance, it doesn't really tell you that there's a block pattern, but that there is a theory behind it that you have applied to make a card like this. And then I also added a few gemstones just to add some extra bling, and it's a nice cute little card. I really like making this card. And I forgot to tell you, I actually ink blended some inks for the clouds behind. I wanted to create it very dreamy and magical, and that's why I added those pink hues and minty green hues for the clouds, for the sky in the back. And then I just adhered it to that top folding note card, and that pretty much completed this card. And here I'm going to show you the close-up look of how this card looks. And soon after this, I'm going to show you the 3 cards that we created using that same pattern theory, block theory, for making these 3 different cards. I hope you enjoyed this video and have given you ideas of taking patterns to create cards, card designs, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.